Welcome back to the European Parliament in Brussels for the second part of Talking Europe. My guest today is Philippe de Fontainevive. He is the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, known as the financial arm of the European Union. The EIB is the world's largest bank and largest lender, topping institutions such as the IMF and the World Bank. Philippe de Fontainevive, thank you for joining us on Talking Europe on France 24. We'll talk about your bank, about the role of your bank, but let's start with the latest news coming from Ireland. Irish voters were asked to take part in a referendum in favour or against the new European Fiscal Pact. The news is in. Irish voters voted in favour of the pact. Is this good news for Europe?
It's a very good piece of news because Ireland has been one of the most important beneficiaries of European solidarity, but it has understood that it has to think twice. And at the end of this, the Irish population has decided to go forward. So all the rest of Europe, with the next election in Greece, in France and everywhere, should think twice also and go forward.
Now, critics say this is not a fiscal pact, this is an austerity pact, and this is why it's wrong for Europe. Would you agree with that view?
Like you, I was not at the dinner on the 23rd of May with the head of states, but what I've heard from the dinner is that they have fully understood that the voters in Ireland, in Greece and in the rest of Europe want to listen to growth, to jobs, to expectations and not only fiscal authority. They understand that they need some new kind of public management to be modern, but they want also to have some hopes. And I think we will, with the next summit at the end of June, have this new balancing.
New balancing, and this is important because France, the new French president, has said he's ready to renegotiate the pact because he says this is all about austerity. He wants to see growth attached to the pact. Do you understand his point of view, or is it in a way dangerous to renegotiate things that were agreed previously by his predecessor?
There are good ideas to relaunch growth, and these ideas are listed, as you know, in 4 or 6 points. None of those is in contradiction with the existing pact. So let's have the head of states debating on the 28th and 29th of June, and I'm sure, because they are wise, that they will come to a consensual orientation.
You were referring to these ideas. One of them is to recapitalize the very bank you work for, the European Investment Bank. We're hearing that it could be recapitalized to 10 billion euros. That means 10 billion euros of additional capital. Are these the figures you are expecting to see emerge from the summit at the end of June?
That's exactly what is being discussed among member states. It's from them. We are not requesting this to them, but what they are looking for is new engine for growth. And what they have seen is that in the past we have been able to multiply the European Union budget to lend much more to the real economy. And so now that they are looking for new engine for growth, they discover something which is right, that pouring 10 billion euros in our capital could lead to 60 billion new loans all over Europe, which itself would transform in 180 billion of real investment within the next 3 years.
Let me ask you very concretely, you say they discovered that they can transform 10 billion into 180 billion euros. How do you hope to achieve this? This is through the so-called leverage mechanism, but can you explain more clearly how it works?
It's very simple. There are two effects. If you are given to us 10 billion of capital, we will use the so-called leverage effect to extend 60 billion of loans. So we multiply by 6. But when we finance any investment, we do finance on average only 1/3. So financing 60 additional billion means financing 180 billion investment in European economy. That is the double leverage effect.
Well, for more on this story and on the recapitalization of the EIB, let's watch our report.
Could those struggling to stimulate a stagnating Eurozone find an ally in the European Investment Bank? German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the champion of fiscal rectitude, is slowly warming to French President François Hollande's mission to promote growth strategies.
Some have indicated their willingness to accept such a proposal. That's a radio start. They are what we call project bonds, to recapitalize the European Investment Bank.
Investors would purchase these so-called project bonds to finance infrastructural development. The bonds' risk would be spread out, some of it underwritten by the European Investment Bank, and would therefore be theoretically safer. It's a possible alternative to the Eurobonds of mutualized sovereign debt that Germany has long resisted. The goal would be to finance some 20 transnational projects to foment economic activity on a continent badly bruised by the ongoing crisis. The sectors being investigated include energy, internet, and transport. Critics say the amounts of money being considered are not up to the task of resurrecting a flatlining economy. Details, though sketchy, are expected to be fleshed out at the European Summit at the end of June.
Philippe de Fontaine-Vive, as we heard, the goal would be to finance up to 20 transnational projects to boost economic activity. It's a hard task, of course, for you to decide what project will revive growth, because as we saw in the past, building new motorways or new ports doesn't always bring sustainable growth. In your view, what should be done? What are the areas where you should really put the money?
We have to select the project which is the most profitable. But profitability does not mean financial profitability, which is what the market does. What we have to do as public bank is to look at the social and economic profitability. That is to say, what is the best value for money for the taxpayer. So what we select is new buildings with less pollution. What we do finance is new energy, which is more about renewable than the old ones. And this is the kind of selection process that with our engineers and with our economists, we do perform, and we present it to the board of directors of the 27 member states so that they concur with us that this selection process is the most efficient possible.
This program is produced in partnership with the Robert Schuman Foundation, which you know very well. It's one of Europe's leading think tanks on European policies. Its Director General, Pascal Joannin, had a question for you. Let's listen to her.
The debate about growth has taken wide proportion in Europe. The Union wants to create a European growth pact. There's a lot to be done. You are Vice President of the EIB. The bank has spent in 2011 54 billion euro of loan inside the Union. The capital of the bank is 232 billion euro. It can be increased to 580 billion euro. The question is, why you have not spent all the money before? Moreover, the European Parliament and the Council has decided to experiment project bond. What do you expect to achieve with it?
The question really is, you are the world's largest bank with a capital of up to 200 billion euros, and the feeling is that sometimes maybe you've been too cautious. You haven't spent enough money. This is a kind of criticism I've been reading about your institution. What do you reply?
You are a European citizen. All of those listening to us are European citizens. So you are shareholder of our public bank, and we owe you a safe management. That's something very crucial, that we do not put at risk the capital of the taxpayer, which is quite different from what have done a lot of banks, including in the City of London. So first of all, I would prefer to be criticized to be too cautious than to be too adventurous.
But too cautious might also mean not generous enough.
Generosity and banking is something which is difficult to manage together. What is much more important for us is to be well managed so that we do keep, you know, the very well-known AAA rating, so that we are able to lend cheap. And this is what we can bring also: long-term financing and cheap financing for really useful investment in Europe. We will continue to do so, and if you think that we would provide some more energy, dynamism, then we will accept to be a little bit more dynamic.
One last question about the role of your bank, and particularly its role in North Africa and in the Mediterranean, which has seen several revolutions. I'm talking, of course, of Tunisia, Libya, Egypt. I know you're very active there. An estimated 1.2 billion euros is expected to be spent this year in the region. But I guess for you, the challenge really is to lend money and still keep up the democratic standards. Where is your position there?
First of all, we have, as Europeans, a new dream. The dream is on the south rim of Europe to have other democracies exactly like we have in the European Union. So this is a huge opportunity for all of us, and we have to support this real transition. Then we have to listen to the needs in this region, to be very cautious about risk of corruption, because again, we have to save taxpayer money, but we have also to select those projects which will improve the well-being of those citizens and really have a deep-rooted democracy at the source of Europe, which is the dream that all of us could have.
Let's move to the situation in Spain. Spain's banking sector is in a very poor state, with the country's third largest bank, Bankia, requiring a bailout of 19 billion euros. This is, of course, very worrying because there's a risk of contagion to the rest of the Eurozone. Now, the Prime Minister of Spain, Mr. Rajoy, insists Spain can deal with the problem by itself, doesn't need the help of Europe, doesn't need a bailout. Is he being courageous or irresponsible?
Spain is very courageous. Spain has decided to face this crisis, which is coming partly because of the real estate crisis, which creates a lot of difficulties. Spain has decided to change a lot of the senior management of their bank. They have decided to concentrate a lot of their banks, and if the Prime Minister of Spain has analyzed this and thinks he has the means to do this restructuring by itself, why don't we owe him respect for this analysis and this courage? I'm on this camp, the optimistic one. I can understand that the financial markets are more speculating than anything else, but we in the European Union institutions, we have to back Spain.
Now, one of the consequences of this vicious circle is that Spain's borrowing costs have risen to almost 7%. These are levels which forced countries such as Ireland and Greece to request a bailout. One of the ideas of the French President and of the European Commission to bring down the borrowing cost is to introduce so-called Eurobonds, jointly guaranteed European bonds. Are you in favor of this?
This is about sovereign debt. This is something that European Investment Bank is not dealing with because we are focusing on investment projects. For the sovereign debt, I think it's much better to wait for some talks among heads of state so that they decide if and when some technicalities could allow them to be more influential.
But on the very principle, the idea for Germans to have to share the toxic debts of the Spanish, of the Greeks, do you understand that it creates problems in countries such as Germany or Finland?
What is fascinating in Europe is that if you are European responsible, you have to understand the 27 public opinions. And that's why to take some time to discuss, talk, and come to a consensual conclusion is something which is part of the European Union construction. And so we should respect that. We are in the time of the debate, but the debate would be very much different if you presented the way you have just done it, that is to say, very negatively, talking about toxic debt. I would not call at all the Spanish debt this way. And you have to understand that each of the members of the Eurozone is benefiting from the Eurozone existence. And not only the debtor, the creditor are also the first beneficiaries of this Eurozone.
Let's move to Greece, where key parliamentary elections will take place on the 17th of June. They're widely regarded as a referendum in favor or against the euro. If the party of Alexis Tsipras, the so-called Syriza party, an anti-bailout party, manages to form a coalition, would this be game over for Greece in the eurozone?
On the 17th of June, there are several elections in Greece, as you mentioned, but also in France. And we have to be used in European democracies to face the result of the election, whatever they are. So let's see first what the Greek people is deciding for itself before influencing them. What we are doing for the time being is supporting Greece. As an example, the European Investment Bank is right now deciding with Greece to extend new loans for small and medium-sized enterprises so that people could see that there are jobs which could be created with the support of the European Union through EIB, through the European Commission. I'm an optimistic, so my belief is that thinking twice to this issue, the Greek people will decide at the end of the day that they are much better supporting the European construction.
And do you regard this election as a referendum in favor or against the euro?
It's for the voters to decide for which, who and when they are voting. I remember so many French elections which was posted as a referendum, but in fact they were deciding on one single person that I would resist to comment politically.
Philippe de Fontaine-Vive, I remind our viewers that you're the Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
Thank you for watching this edition of Talking Europe from the European Parliament in Brussels. From all of us here, goodbye.